But I didn't hear. I got it. Oh, it's good. I'm sorry. This is not even have sense. Yes. Yeah, definitely. So,
Bob, I was about to give up. I was about to like just move on to like, all right, basketball season starting soon. Like I'm done. I didn't watch the one we won. I watched all the other ones, just I mean parts of them before I'm just like, okay, I can't. Like, I'm done watching.
They dominated. They had 50 shots. But it was 3-2, third period, and they scored in 6 seconds. It's tied. It's like, I know we won. No, overtime. It was a good game. It was fun. Fine. Yeah, fine.
Well, I saw the overtime. I was like
that's still like, just couldn't score.
so, like they're reeling me back. It's like, hey, if we could, run off a few wins here, climb back into this thing.
Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh boy. I am great. A little chilly.
Are you?
It was a little. It was
How's the weather here?
a little bit nippy in office. I had to break out my.
It was hot yesterday.
I think it's supposed to warm up today. This morning it was. Brian, are you on?
I'm thinking about changing its status, but I should say that I kind of did when I was in high school. It had to be small stuff.
in
You know,
He's got it figured out.
it's nice. It appeals to you.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel it. I need that.
It's like, so it's kind of falling out, and it's like, maybe I'm missing out, right? It's like, oh man.
And just knowing what it's future.
Do this.
I did it for earlier this year, so I didn't really just know.
All right, we're going to get started with our Bible class this morning. We are in Genesis chapter 27. Normally in my notes, you guys don't know this, but just a little peek behind the curtain. So if you're ever wondering, do preachers just, they make their slides and then it's just like locked away in their brain of knowing when to push that button? Other preachers, it might be like that. For this preacher, it is not. I put little blue highlighter marks in my notes for when I'm supposed to push the button, so then that takes all the thinking out of it. However, this morning I did not put the blue marks in there. And so we're going to see how much of my own slides I remember. That'll be a fun little game for us. It's just how much do I know my own stuff? We're in chapter 27. Last week we took a week off while Hy was in town. And what a treat that was for all of us. Not only to hear his report, but also the sermon that he preached. I love hearing that guy preach, and hopefully you did too. In Genesis thus far, we're kind of in this between time of Isaac and, kind of Isaac's story really is kind of more like Jacob's story. We don't know much and we don't read much about Isaac, but the selling of the birthright at the end of chapter 25. Chapter 26 is kind of pretty much the bulk of what we get to know about Isaac. And then in chapter 27, the spotlight kind of turns back onto Jacob, even though Isaac is around for what happens in chapter 27. So let's read verses 1 through 4 as we get started this morning. It says, when Isaac was old, and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, my son? And he answered, here I am. He said, behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me. And prepare for me delicious food as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. Isaac believed that in his time of dying was upon him, and this was maybe a way of settling his affairs. Even though by most counts, Isaac would still live about another 30 years after this point, and so maybe his eyesight going dim, he was just like, all right, it's all over for me. So let's just make sure that everything's settled. I don't know if you have someone in your life that's like that. My mom, ever since she turned like 55, has been trying to settle accounts with her sons. Just like, this is what's going to happen, like, you take this and take that, and it's like, Mom, you're not that old. Calm down. Maybe this is one of those occasions, by any means, though, that Isaac asked for food, but he seemed to mostly wanting to glory in Esau's power as a mighty and manly hunter. Brian, we were just talking about that, right? There's something primal or manly about going out and hunting something. I've never hunted in my life. I would like to at some point, and so I can experience this level of masculinity that is missing from my life. So I can be a real man. Maybe that's what my facial hair is waiting for. Once I go hunting, it's like, all right, you checked all the boxes now. Now you can have the full and luscious beard that you've always wanted. Maybe, probably not. I don't think there's hope for that at this point. But we later find that Isaac really couldn't tell the difference between either his son's food or his wife's food. And so it wasn't really so much about, Esau, you just cooked such great food that I want to taste it one more time. This was a, go out and do the manly thing that you like to do, and then, provide me this and I will give you a blessing. It says that my soul may bless you before I die. Strangely, Isaac insisted on giving the blessing to Esau, the one whom God did not choose. You can look back at that in chapter 25, verse 23. The son who despised his birthright, and who we later find out that he married pagan wives. It seemed Isaac rejected godly thinking and spiritual wisdom, and instead thought only of food and the common man-centered ideas of life. We assume Isaac knew of the prophecy that the older would serve the younger, and that God had already chosen Jacob for the promise to continue through. Why do you think Isaac did this? Why continue playing favorites here with Esau? He knew what God said regarding his sons. He had seen his chosen son despise his birthright, and yet he still wanted to bless Esau. Why? What do you think?
Is it something you like, you always like the underdogs?
We like the underdogs. I can appreciate that. I feel like any sports game that I turn on, if I don't have any stakes in it, it's like, oh, I want to see this team come back and win, or this team is not supposed to be. Maybe he thought, since God had already chosen Jacob, and since Rebecca was on Jacob's side too. Who was that? Oh, Aaron?
I think it just shows a father's blind love for their kids.
Mm.
And we know that Esau and Isaac had more in common with each other. They were probably more in camaraderie with one another, and Jacob and Rebecca were on the other side.
I think this is the kind of, when we think of Jacob and Esau, this is where our minds go to, of the fact that Isaac and Rebecca were playing favorites. What's the danger of playing favorites with your children?
Jealousy, resentment.
Jealousy, resentment. Did anyone do that? Did anyone suspect their parents of doing that? Maybe. See, now that's a different question, right? Because we, of course, would never. I think there is something to be said about compatibility. You have multiple children. There are ones who display certain characteristics that just are like, oh, you're like me, child. Like, I get you. Whereas with the other parent, you'd be like, you drive me crazy. And then you wonder as your spouse, like, I wonder what that means. That they're just like me. They drive you crazy, huh? That some kids, because of their characteristics, might be easier for you individually to get along with. But as much as we, of course, us sitting in this room, we would never do such a thing because we understand the dangers of playing favorites, but it happens all the time. I've talked to many clients in a counseling environment where it wasn't like just kind of a feeling. It was an overt message told to a particular person, especially during their adolescence, of you are the problem. You are the issue. Our lives would be better if you weren't around. And as just sad and heartbreaking as that is, it is a true and real situation that exists even in the world today, where parents play favorites, and it can do some serious damage. We talk all the time of like, okay, Esau was Isaac's favorite and Rebecca was Jacob's favorite. Do you ever wonder about what their relationship looked like with the opposites? Right? Like, what was Jacob's relationship with his father? Or what was Esau's relationship like with his mother? See, that's not what we typically talk about, but the writing is on the wall here of just how strained a relationship that must have looked like. And the difficulties and problems that arise from it. Judy, did you? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say,
No.
when I raise my hand, you don't ever look over.
That is true.
Yelling.
No, please interrupt.
So, as a twin, growing up, my parents had favorites, and I was my mom's favorite because having twins is a lot. I mean, it's a lot of work, and I mean, this was almost 50 years ago, so there's a lot of conveniences we have now that she didn't have.
Yeah.
But I was very easy and very pleasing and very quiet. And my sister was just like her. And you're already tired and exhausted and working, and you have two children that are just always kind of fighting with each other because you're always together. And for her to be with my sister was really hard because she was not easy. She never got a break because my sister was so intense. But my dad was really laid back, just like me, and he didn't really care if I was there or not because we didn't talk, but he loved being with my sister. So it's funny that you do grow up in a dynamic like that. And now that I've been a mother, maybe it's because she was just so tired and she's like a child. Lighten up. You need to take a break. So I don't know, but I was always my favorite.
Yeah.
And I think it was because I was just easy.
Yeah. I think twins, I can only imagine. When you don't have kids, I think the idea of twins is like, oh, that'd be interesting. That'd
That
be
is a
fun.
lot. That is a lot.
But with after having children, I'm like, when I see people who have twins, I'm like, I can't even imagine, because one was enough. So you people that have twins out there, John and Megan, yeah. Good luck. Be praying for you. Let's read verses 5 through 10 as the story continues. Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, so that I may prepare from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, that he may bless you before he dies. There's a lot of interesting family dynamics and just kind of case studies in family counseling. Rob, are you picking up on some triangulation here? Just a little bit, right? That, I mean, we read this and just like, why would you, Rebecca, why would you do this? And if it wasn't obvious of the parents playing favorites here, I mean, all of our suspicions are realized. And she even comes out with it, saying, hey, your dad's wanting to bless your brother, but we're going to pull one over on him so he blesses you instead. It's just like, wow. The feeling that this was scheming and spying here, but it is possible that she just could have casually overheard this important conversation, and instead of trusting God to fulfill what he promised, Rebecca used manipulative scheming to accomplish what she thought was God's plan, and likely also her preference. Typically in the Bible, we have like, oh, this is obviously the bad guys and these are obviously the good guys. I don't know if anyone comes out of this situation, clean. Of like, oh, well, Jacob's the chosen one, right? And so that justifies this. I think both Isaac and Rebekah are guilty of the same thing, of thinking in only earthly terms and thinking of only the physical blessings that they were trying to give to their chosen children. And the same issue happened with Isaac's mom and dad, right? Okay, God has this promise, and so now it's up to me to accomplish this by earthly means instead of trusting in Him. When we're only thinking of the physical, not only do we forget about the spiritual, I think it demonstrates an incredible doubt or lack of faith in our God, which we covered at length in the story of Abraham. Verses 11 through 17, it says, "But Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, 'Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him, and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing.' His mother said to him, 'Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go bring them to me.' So he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son, and the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. And she put the delicious food and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob." Jacob, true to his name of being a trickster and a scoundrel, was happy to go along with the plan. His only concern was if the plan should succeed, right? When we are willing to abandon the question of right and wrong, and when we are only concerned with what works, we agree with the modern idea of pragmatism, as many churches do today. Of, well, as long as it works, then that's what we should be doing. Which, as spiritually minded people, that obviously should not be the only question that we ask of whether something works or not. Because if our goal was simply just to fill up a building and to build bigger buildings, then there are far better and easier ways that we could do that
But as spiritually minded people, there's other things that we need to consider as well. Significantly, at this point, each person in this drama acted in man-centered or physical wisdom and energy, and not according to the divine or spiritual wisdom. All four of them, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Esau, did not trust each other. And I mean, it's hard to imagine the cooking food and placing hair on your body so that you can deceive an old blind man. It might be hard for us to put ourselves in those shoes. But if you can imagine a family that just everyone in the family does not trust each other, that might be an easier branch for us to grab and for us to imagine. Some of us might have experienced exactly that kind of family and the damage that it can cause. The worst aspect of all is that they seem to regard the blessing that Isaac was going to give as something magical, right? Of like, oh, we have to do this. If Jacob doesn't receive the blessing, then there's just simply no way for God's promise to come about. And that's just not true. They viewed it as something that wasn't what it was supposed to be. But in giving the blessing, the most Isaac could do was to recognize God's call and blessing on Jacob. Only God could truly bestow the blessing that was supposed to come, from Abraham through Isaac. And Esau could receive the blessing from Isaac 100 times, but it only mattered if the God of heaven honored it. Let's keep reading. Verses 18 and following. It says, so he went to his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat my game, that your soul may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, how is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? He answered, because the Lord your God granted me success. Ooh, right, like this just gets bad. Then Isaac said to Jacob, please come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not. So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, the voice of Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, are you really my son Esau? He answered, I am. Then he said, bring it near to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate. And he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, come near and kiss me, my son. So he came near and kissed him. And Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him. When I was a kid, I can't remember where I learned this. It was probably on some afternoon family sitcom. It was Family Matters, Full House, all those good sources of just life lessons. Or Home Improvement. Oh, that was great. That was great. Anyways, I picked it up from somewhere. Of some kid in some show was caught in a lie, and what they said is, if you're caught in a lie, just keep lying. And then, it's like, in practice, short-term success was, it's like, just keep lying. That's what I experienced in my life. But over the long haul, It's like the more lies you tell, the more just kind of everything starts to unravel, right? And reading through this section, it's just like lie on top of lie on top of lie, and you might be able to just spin this if it were just some random person, right? Like, Abraham here, he told countless lies to just kind of random people in the story, but this is a family. And there's obvious deception here. There's an obvious intent to just kind of trick a blind old man, which it just feels wrong, right? Like every single lie you read, you're just like, oh, like why are we continuing to go down this road? Sometimes it's difficult to discern a lie. And again, thinking of our children, there are some of my children who they're really good liars. And then there's other children who are terrible liars. That like they try to lie, and you can just see it on their face, and it's not hard for you to discern. It's sometimes difficult to discern in a lie. Whether a statement is sin or not comes back to the question of intent. But other times it is not difficult at all. And here Jacob clearly lied to his father. Jacob, the scoundrel, did not hesitate to give credit to God as part of his deception, right? I think that's the one that is so difficult to hear. Isaac says, how did you find the game so fast? And then Jacob says, because God has blessed me. You're just like, don't bring God into it. Like, what are you doing, man? Jacob could do this because he was only concerned with what worked. They say that the ends justify the means. But that's not true. And since he rightly knew that God wanted him to have the birthright, he justified any lie or other sin he committed in pursuit of that promise. And so he likely did so telling himself that it was all for a righteous cause. Isaac says, are you really my son? Even under repeated questioning, Jacob stayed true to his lie. In verses 27 through 29, we get the blessing. After Isaac smelled the smell of his garment, it says, see, the smell of my son is as the smell of the field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's son bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. This is where, like it was a little ambiguous before as to the promise or the prophecy of the older serving the younger. We know that it was told to her. And the question that I asked before was, do we think that Rebekah told Isaac this prophecy? And it's kind of like, well, I think that she would have to, or I think here, at least some part along the way, Isaac had to have been told this prophecy. Because the words that he chooses here specifically, right? Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. That seems a little pointed, doesn't it? Right? Of just your mother's sons. aren't those mother's sons also your sons? Why would he say it like that? Isaac blessed Jacob to be the spiritual head of the family. We talked about that last time of like what is this birthright? And so it is partially inheritance, which would be land and wealth, but it's also partially spiritual, in that they would whoever had the birthright or the blessing would be the spiritual head of the family. Isaac had that right, not Ishmael, to pass on the blessing related to the covenant of Abraham. The son, either Jacob or Esau, who received this blessing would be able to pass it on to his descendants. And the words of the blessing are filled with pictures of the Lord's rich bounty, and echoed some of the words that of God's covenant to Abraham. But then, as he gets more specific of, hey, you're going to be Lord over your brothers, and your mother's sons will bow down to you. That seems almost an exact opposite to what God said was going to happen. And so I don't know if Isaac is thinking that this blessing is like somehow magical, right? It's like, if I do this, then I can, change God's mind, or I can, be in charge here. But I think this kind of makes me think too of how often we try to do that. In our young adult study on Tuesday nights, we were talking about how do I find God's will for my life? And that's a question that gets asked so often these days, of how do I find God's will for my life? And we first started talking about how, well, that question is really kind of what will are we talking about here? And we talked about God's three different wills. The first one is God's will of decree, saying that when God says something is going to happen, it really doesn't matter what we think or feel or do. It's going to happen, right? It's like, how am I going to overpower or outwit God in some way? And I wonder if that's what Isaac is doing here, right? Of like, I know God already said it, but he's working through humans, and so if I kind of do this, then my will be able to supersede God. And the thing is through all of this, and this is where when you study providence, God's providence of how he's able to work and weave through our mistakes and our failures to get his desired outcome anyways, is just incredible. Because this story is so full of just ugliness and like the opposite of what you would want in a family, and God can still use all of their lies and deceit and mistrust in each other to still get his desired outcome. If you want to know what the other two wills are, besides God's will of decree, come to the young adult study. And you might say, well, I'm not young. Well, then you're going to have to wait until I bring that young adult study to this study. If you really want to know, I'll tell you afterwards. But I don't know how many of you really want to know. Verses 30 through 32, it says this: As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob was scarcely gone out of the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. And he also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I'm your son, your firstborn, Esau." We picture Esau hunting, returning, preparing the food with pleasure. Right? This is where we get the old switcheroo here. So excited that he would receive the blessing from his father and all the material benefits that went with it. Verse 33, it says, "Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, 'Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it all before you came?' and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed. The ESV translates verse 33 as Isaac trembled very violently. Any other translations have that different? Exceedingly. Trembled exceedingly. The image here is, I don't know if you've known anyone to, when they get angry, they, just kind of shake, right? Gabe, our son, he used to do that. We'd call it hulking out. it's like you need to, you're going to pass out. Like, calm down. And I think when we know children when they get to that, I'm so angry, right? It's almost cute even. But when an old blind man does it, he's so enraged, he's so furious at being made a fool, being taken advantage of. It's an ugly picture, right? Just being so hurt, overcome with a deep sense that something had gone wrong in his plan. Isaac was troubled because he knew that he had tried to work against what God revealed. And at this moment, Isaac realized that he would always lose when he tried to resist God's will, even when he didn't like God's will. In Hebrews 11, can you believe it? Some of the people in this story get mentioned in Hebrews 11 in the hall of faith. It says in Hebrews 11 verse 20, it says, by faith Isaac invoked future blessings on Jacob and Esau. That sentence seems a bit reductive. Of like, you're going to sum all this up in, okay, all right. But I think Isaac's faith was demonstrated after his attempt to redirect the will of God. And he said of Jacob, and indeed he shall be blessed. Of not trying to double back or to somehow break the blessing that he had already given to Jacob. And as soon as Isaac perceives that he has been wrong in wishing to bless Esau, he does not persist in it. He'll give Esau such a blessing as he may, but he does not think for a moment of retracting what he has done. Verses 34 through 38, it says, as soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me, even also, O my father. And he said, your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing. Esau said, is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me. These 2 times he took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. Then he said, have you not reserved a blessing for me? Isaac answered and said to Esau, behold, I have made him lord over you and all his brothers. I have given him to him for servants, and with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Man. This is such a hard chapter, right? Of just you can hear the anguish of Esau here, of one being cheated by his brother, what he thinks as a second time, even though Esau was the one who despised his birthright and didn't really treat it with much respect way back when. But that's how our minds get going, right? When we start thinking of things, we rightly try to justify ourselves. He says, he took away my birthright. But we know that that's not exactly what happened. And Esau could not truly say of Jacob, that he took away my birthright. Hebrews 12 uses the occasion of Esau as a warning. Hebrews 12 verses 15 through 17, this is what the Hebrews writer said. It says, see to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it may become defiled, that no one is sexually immoral or unholy like Esau, who sold his birthright for a single meal. For you know that afterward, when he desired to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no chance to repent, though he sought it with tears. Esau's tears were the tears of frustrated selfishness, not of regret for his own sin and despising his birthright. And the Hebrews writer uses this talking about a root of bitterness that springs up and causes trouble so that we would be a distraction and we would fail to obtain the grace of God, which is freely available to all of us. We need to make sure in our lives that we are mourning the right things. And more importantly, that we are learning the lessons that God is trying to teach us through this or similar events that can happen in our lives. Verses 39 through 40, it says, Then Isaac his father answered and said to him, Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall be your dwelling, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother, and when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck. His life would not be easy, though it could be blessed. Verses 41 and 42, it says that now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Esau's hatred rose against Jacob for many reasons, but mostly it was out of pride and envy. Pride in that his brother would be preferred before him in regard to the covenant, and envy in that his brother would enjoy a greater prosperity. Verses 43 through 46, it says, Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise and flee to Laban, my brother, in Haran, and stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day? Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I loathe my life because of the Hittite woman. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me? So, Esau wants to kill Jacob, which, can you blame him? Not really. Maybe a little bit of an overreaction, maybe a little bit his own fault, but like I said, no one walks out of this chapter clean. There's plenty of blame and sin to go around, as it seems. Chapter 28, we're going to see what happens when Jacob runs away. And that'll be the beginning of a whole different part and chapter of Jacob's life. All right, so parents, love your kids, okay? Don't let this happen to you. Respect, trust, love, all of those things. Let them be found, hopefully, in our families, and we can do better. Let's pray, and then we'll be dismissed from our class this morning. Dear Heavenly Father, God, as we think about the events that occurred in Isaac and Rebecca's family. God, help us to be better. Help us to do better. Help us to learn from these examples that you have given to us. God, family dynamics can be so difficult at times, and we pray for courage. We pray for discernment, that we can raise our kids in your love, in your strength. God, thank you for the tremendous opportunity that we have and the blessings that you have given to us and our children. God, please be with us now as we enter into a time of worship, that we might sing out songs of praise that glorify and honor your name.